everybody, and welcome to Life is a Gamble. My guest today is Norm Beck. Norm is a professional bridge player and world-class magician and all-around raconteur. Norm, welcome to Life is a Gamble.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege and a pleasure.
I really got interested. One time I asked you about what was the biggest gamble you ever took in your life. And you said something about a bet that you won that turned out to be the biggest loser. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So can you explain that?
So I'm from a small town in Oklahoma. When I went to college in Durant, which is about 100 miles north of, I got involved with bridge and I had a short career in law enforcement, had a short career in insurance. I was really enamored with bridge. When I say enamored, I'm talking like Phil Ivey type of enamored. I mean, I take it really serious. And the best player in the world lived in Dallas, a guy named Bob Hammond. He was at the time the best player in the world. And I got a chance to work for him. A lot of the really good bridge players in Dallas all had the same doctor. And so without thinking anything about it, I took him on as my doctor. We were it would be the same thing as a poker tournament, but it was like a small bridge tournament. And this doctor had just made what was at the time the highest rank you could have in bridge, which was called a life master. Doesn't mean much except you played a lot. But anyway, I congratulated it. It was a tournament with a team of four where we had four people on a team, and it was basically him and three chairs. In a poker tournament, it would be the same as dead money, I guess would be a proper term. Uh, and he said, we need to make a bet on the tournament. And I'm thinking, he wants to bet, lunch or dinner. I felt like I definitely was in an overlay position. And I said, okay, sure. What do you have in mind? He said, if you beat me, or it said, if I beat you, you have to teach my son how to be a really good magician. Well, that's real subjective. Who knows what really good means or how long it would take? And I said, okay, and what if I should beat you? He said, you won't pay for your health insurance or your medical coverage for 10 years. I'll take care of it. I only had to think for just a millisecond and said, shuffle the cards, you got a bet. And so we played and we prevailed, beat him. He said, okay, from now on, everything's free. And I thought, man, this is great. And then not long after that, he had a stroke and died. But in the court, but to his word, I mean, he never charged me for anything. Problem was, I had two medical conditions that he missed because I was laying in bed at night. My better half would say something I couldn't hear her, and she kept saying, "Go get your hearing checked. Go get your hearing checked." And I just ignored her. Finally, I came in one day and she handed me a business card and said, "Go get your hearing checked." And I did it, but not because I thought I had a problem, but because I wanted her to shut up. Maybe shut up's the wrong word. I wanted her to asking me about it. So I went and got my hearing checked. And when I got done, the guy said, you need an MRI. And I said, okay, I'm thinking they're going to schedule it 2 weeks or a month or something else. Okay, when? He said, your appointment's in 45 minutes. I've already made it for you. I thought, I know a little bit about tells, but this wasn't good. So I went and got my MRI, and he said, now there'll be a doctor calling you tomorrow, doctor's office for a different doctor. And I thought, yeah, right, okay. So the next day, I get a phone call, not from a receptionist, not from a nurse, from the doctor. He said, you need to come in and see me. I said, okay, what time? He said, doesn't matter. Whenever you come, I'm going to see you. And I thought, oh, this is not good. So I showed up, and immediately they didn't take me to examine. He took me back to his private office with all the plaques and everything up on the wall. And I stepped down and he said, well, I know what's the problem, man. He said, you have an acoustic neuroma. He said, you know what an acoustic neuroma is? I said, yeah, I know what acoustic is. I said, what you use to play pool? He said, no. He said, you have a brain tumor. He said, it's the size of a baby. He said, now, it's not malignant. He said, it's benign. He said, if you don't do anything, if you just leave it alone, he said, all it's going to do is kill you. I'm
That's
at,
all.
I said, time out. I said, I don't know what's behind door number 2 and door number 3, but I don't like door number 1. He said, well, there are no doors 2 or 3. He said, the only choice you have is to have brain surgery. He said, it'll be about 12 hours long. Me and a neurosurgeon. He said, you'll be in the ICU, neuro, neuro ICU for about a week. Then you'll have a year recovery. You won't feel good for a year. And I thought, yeah, right. There ain't no way I'm going to keep me down for a year. And I said, okay. So now I came home and I couldn't say the words to my better half. I have a brain. Couldn't do it. So I wrote them out on a piece of paper to them. And so started preparing for it. But the first thing I did as a gambler, the very first thing I did was I hired a malpractice attorney before I ever went in for my neurosurgeon comp. So I go to this, one of the best personal injury attorneys in the state. So I want to hire you for a couple hours. He said, you're involved in a car wreck. He said, you had an adverse reaction to a drug. I said, no. He said, you had some mistreatment in the hospital. I said, no. He said, we're going to have a hard time winning this lawsuit. I said, I want to sue anybody. It's not why I'm here. I said, you're the best personal injury attorney in the state. I said, I got to go in for 12 hours of brain surgery, and I need to know if these two agents know what they're doing. And I said, you know where all the bones are buried, and you know what's behind every closet. He looked at me like I was on drugs. I've been practicing law for 35 years. He said, nobody's ever made this request. I said, well, until yesterday, I didn't need you. What was funny or ironic was at the same time there was another neurosurgeon in Dallas that they convicted of murder and malpractice that was operating on people when he was high on cocaine and tequila. So, I mean, I could have just immediately picked him if I didn't know. I just, but I'm smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough to know. So when there's some subject I don't know, I don't pretend it and wing it. I go find out who the very best is in whatever field it is I need to know and say, what do I need to know? You live in Vegas, and one of the things that happened to me a number of years ago, I used to travel to Vegas, probably 3, 4 times a month. I have a lot of friends in Vegas that I won't mention their names because it doesn't really add or detract from the story. But there used to be a place, the Gamblers Book Club, and the guy who ran it was a character and I really liked him and would go. Every time I came to Vegas, there were 2 places I always went. I always went to the Gamblers Book Club and I always went to Gamblers General Store. So I'm with this friend of mine who's from the Gamblers Book Club, and there was a brand new book on blackjack. Now, it's a book by an author that neither one of us have ever heard of. Like $20, $15. My friend, who knows as much about blackjack as anyone in the world, picks it up. He buys it. I said, what are you doing? You know more about blackjack than the guy who wrote the book. I said, we never heard. Oh, that's true. He said, but what if there's something in the book that I don't know? I can't afford to not know. So I can buy the book. I can go through it sitting on the John. And if there's nothing in it I need, I'll just re-gift it. Change my perspective on how I look at the world. That one event in that bookstore changed the way So I now do exactly the same thing because he's way smarter than I am. If there's 4 or 5 subjects I'm really interested in, first when the book comes out, I just buy it. I read everything there is to know about it. That's, you know. So, but, so after I went and saw this malpractice attorney, I used to work in a hospital for 5 years when I was a police officer. I worked security. And so I got to know the ins and outs of a hospital. And in a hospital, there's one group of people that will not bullshit you. You might get bullshitted by the administration. You might have a doctor not be totally candid with you. But the one group of people that 100% you can trust are the RNs because they don't pick any BS off of anybody. And I also know that there's one thing that RNs have a real soft spot for is food. So what I did was I know at night, no doctors or administrators are. So I went to a donut shop and got buy a great big box of donuts and a great big jug of good coffee. And I go to the neuro ICU at 2 o'clock in the morning. Ain't nobody there but them RNs and the orderlies and me. And so I gave it to them and explained to them what I was there. And it was one kind of I'm not going to say she was homely, but she wasn't the best looking gal on the block, probably, but really nice. And she kind of had a soft heart, a warm ear, told her what my problem was. And I said, look, I never really been in the hospital. I couldn't spell acoustic neuroma. I still can't. I don't know anything about the ICU or what's involved. But what I need to know is what kind of doctors Dr. Lazar. Just her and I in the break room. And I was scared, to be honest with you. I was scared. I mean, I, I know you have a lot of people on here that gamble. I've gambled for some. I've gambled for more money on one single bet than anybody you know. I bet as much as $1 billion on a single bet. But I never was. That didn't bother me because it wasn't my money. I was kind of freeloading it. But this bothered me because if I messed it up, there wasn't no second chance. So I asked her what kind of doctor. And she said, well, I'll tell you. She said, he's rough and he's tough. He's got a really shitty bedside. And he's the best blankety blank neurosurgeon in the city. I said, he and I'll get along just. So that was once I felt comfortable, and it didn't take me long because I talked to people that knew. I went in, and sure enough, 12 and a half hour brain surgery. Oh, one other thing I did that people that listen to this would have never thought to do. I hired another doctor. I hired a doctor to sit with my mother and my partner, my girlfriend, during the surgery. And the reason I did that was because if a surgeon comes out, he starts talking to you, and you're a lay person, you don't really know or understand exactly what he's saying or not saying. But if you have a doctor, he knows. He would know if it was dire, if it was bad, if it was good, whatever. And I wanted an advocate. So I was willing to pay the money to have them to give my mother and my better half comfort. So I was in there for like about a week, and I came home. I didn't feel good for about a year. I actually had to go back in because I sprung a leak, and they had to go in and operate on me a second time. But it wasn't as bad as the first time. They asked you on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain do you have? I said, feel like somebody hit me over the back of the head with a beer bottle. He said, sir, I don't really know what that feels like. I said, you weren't raised in northeastern Oklahoma like I was. That was kind of it in a nutshell as far as the biggest bet, and I made a lot of liver bet. I mean, I kind of got into the game kind of in a strange way, but
And how was that? How did you get into the gambling business?
well, I had a checkered past, and I never played chess or checkers. I learned how to count and play cards before I could read. My dad had to play rummy and cribbage before I could read. And my dad never graduated from high school. My dad was kind of raised on the streets, and he never shielded me from life at all. And when I was a little boy, before there was ever car mutual crack, before you could ever go up to a window, we would go to what was called wildcat track. And there were always two or three bookies in and around the paddock with a racing form. And they would say things like, I'll take the number 2 horse and the number 6 horse and you get the field. Or I'll take the 1 horse. 40, I mean, and you would go up to him and give him your money, and he'd take your money, write your name down, what the bet was, and after the race, if you won, you went back up and he paid you. I mean, that was kind of how it worked. And when I got to college, we played a little bit of poker. And when I was in high school, not very much. I never was a poker player, but I was a pool player. I mean, I worked in a roadhouse as a busboy and a bartender at 14. And the owner was a pool hustler. So he taught me how to hustle pool. I never was a really good pool hustler, but I could beat the Cowboys out of a beer or a dollar. I mean, for me, if I bet $5 with somebody, I was a big bet. I lost my first
You
bar
were
bet.
14. Yeah.
I lost my first bar bet when I was 14. I lost $2. But then
Wait, what was the bar bet you lost?
I was on a pool table. You put a cue ball at the corner pocket and a cue ball at the side, a ball at the corner pocket, the side pocket. Set the rack up on the side like this. And he said, I'll make both balls in one shot and make the cue ball jump off the table and go through the rack. I thought there's no way. So I set the 2 balls down, put a pool cue down in front of them, set the cue ball over here behind it, take the cue ball and get the cue stick knocked both balls in and went right off the table.
Ah.
So, it was, but then when I was in high school and I was like 16 or 17, I got timed at the county fair by a game called Razzle, which is by far the most diabolical con game, carnival game ever invented, because they cheat on the front end so you win, and then you lose on the back end when they play fair. When they're playing fair, you have no chance to win. The only way you can win is if they're cheating for it. So I lost like $32, which was a ton of money in high school. And I couldn't figure out how it could have happened. So I went and researched it and found the carnival game and realized what had happened. So years later, I was in Atlantic City and they were playing Razzle on the boardwalk.
Oh, wow.
And so I walked up, and one of the first rules of being smart is knowing how to play dumb. And I'm real good at playing dumb. Really good. I can play the country room to perfection. So I walked up. How y'all doing? What you got? What's going? And they kind of wrote me in. And so and it was only cost $1. So I was going to play 3 or 4 times for losing $1 because I wanted to hear the pitch. And so I play and I win. I play and I win. I play and I win. Finally, I said to the guy, I said, do you own this? He said, no. I said, I need to talk to your boss. He looked at me and said, what? I said, buddy, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I said, I've watched you. I said, you miscounted those dominoes 3 times in a row. And I said, you can't even count up to the amount, right amount. I said, your boss needs to know how incompetent you are. So he was, it was worth the $3 or $4 I spent to see the look on his face, because you could tell nobody had ever done it.
Yeah. Well, but wait, I mean, if you had won, you should be ahead $3 or $4, shouldn't you?
No, because you have to get to 100 points. It's like playing football.
Oh, I
And
see.
each time you play, it costs you $1. As soon as you get to 100, you've won. But you're just moving in that direction. So you don't win a prize until you get to 100. Typically what they'll do, they get you to like 98 or 99 and you're 1 point away. Then you'll be on the fence, and I'll say, look, if you can go get some money and come back. Normally I'm not supposed to let you do it, but for you I will. and you ain't ever gonna win. You're just not gonna win.
Yeah.
It's the best game I know of. To cheat people, Razzle's far and away the best. Although some of the games in Las Vegas they're pretty good at.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, basically my job. I mean, I'm in my 35th year. We're basically we provide contingency cash prizes for probability based events, which is a real polite way of saying we're not. We'll take any. You know, if I can figure out if we can figure out what the odds are, and if we can make it safe, we'll do it. Now, there's some things we won't do. As an example, there was a guy, which I won't mention any names, but wanted to play poker for $5 million. And he was willing to play a group of people that knew how to play poker. And it would be like whoever wins the 5 million. Well, the poker players that were professional and knew how to play didn't have 5 million. So they wanted us to back it. And I said no. And they were like, well, why not? I said, well, because if I back you, how do I know you don't throw the game, let the other guy win, and you take 2.5, and he takes 2.5, and I'm left paying out 5 million? And they said, we never thought of that. I said, that's why you play poker for a living. And that's why I live in Dallas and think about stupid stuff,
Yeah.
which they had thought about.
The idea that they hadn't, when I first moved to Las Vegas, I was a very big backgammon player. And when I got to Las Vegas and I would go to the backgammon club, and one of the people there was Puggy Pearson, who, liked to play backgammon, and he was terrible at it. The guy who ran the backgammon club had teamed up with Puggy to play another guy. And Puggy ended up losing with the help of this guy who was a professional. Puggy ended up losing $100,000. And then later I found out that the guy had done exactly what you're talking about, had partnered with the other guy, and they were splitting Puggy's $100,000, which that kind of stuff was also very common in pool rooms, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah. Now, you said backgammon. Did you ever know a guy named Malcolm Davis?
Oh, sure. Of course. I knew about Malcolm for decades. Yeah.
Malcolm was a good friend of mine. He was from Dallas.
Yep.
And he and I had, shall we say, a lot of the same interests. Yeah. He was a very, very good backgammon.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
And he started late in life. He wasn't, he hasn't played backgammon his whole life. I mean, he was very good at it. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple, 3 years ago.
This has been great, but I just want to, you mentioned in passing the $1 billion bet, and I'm sure my audience is going, wait a minute, we want to hear about a $1 billion bet. So,
okay, well, so what a lot of people don't realize, the casinos in Las Vegas and the lottery around the country, they're not gambling. They're not in the gambling business. If you think for a minute that Caesar's Palace is in business, you're wrong. They're not. They're in the grind business. They're more than happy to come in, set the limits, and you agree to play for 8, 10, 12 hours, and they put the limits on you. They're more than willing to do that. So we do a lot of business with lottery. And in fact, one of my favorite stories about the lottery, which the same lottery did for the billion, there was a lottery agent. My favorite question to ask people in the gambling business is, what's the craziest thing in your line of work? And I've gotten some really, really clever answers. So, guy had a girlfriend in Dallas, and he went to her and he said, I got this lottery ticket. It's for $25,000. Don't cash it in. I'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll go to Vegas and have a good time. She said, okay. The guy goes to his girlfriend in Houston. Says, I got this lottery ticket. It's worth $25 grand. I'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll cash it in. We'll go to Las Vegas. Sounds almost like a joke. Well, the girlfriend in Houston holds on to the ticket, and the girlfriend in Dallas immediately goes to the lottery office because it's more than $600 in Austin to cash it in. So she goes in and they said, just your ticket? Yep. You bought it? Yep. Has it ever been out of your custody and control? No. Um, you understand that if you've altered this ticket in any way, shape, form, or fashion, it's considered fraud and you will be arrested. Nope. You have to sign this affidavit. But if you sign this affidavit and you mess with the ticket in any way, you're going to go to jail. I want to sign it. So the guy clearly was giving her every out in the world. So she signs the affidavit and they said, you're under arrest for fraud. Well, wait a minute. Wait, let me tell you. My boyfriend, so now they call the boyfriend. He said, yeah, I got the winning ticket in my billfold. He said, I had a girlfriend in Dallas. I didn't know which one I could trust. So I got a test thing. So, but so that was 25,000, which is not a big deal. So they wanted to do a dice throw for $1 billion. This was a lottery that if you had played the lottery and you had not won, hard to imagine that ever happening, somebody not winning, but I hear occasionally it does.
Yeah.
So if you didn't win, you could send in your ticket for what they call the second chance drawing. They draw your name, you go to Vegas to play again. Well, if you played in Vegas, there were different things that we weren't involved with where you could win up to $20 million. So you lost on the lottery ticket, you go to Vegas, you play, and you get lucky, and you won $20 million. Now I go to you and I say, take these two dice, if you throw them against the wall, and it comes up 6-6 or whatever, 1-1, you win $1 billion. Now, if it doesn't, you lose the $20 million. I polled a lot of people, and I only talked to one person that would have thrown the die. Everybody else, when you got the $20 million, let's go to the cage. I'm done. But I figured out a way because we will often, just like a bookie, will lay off a particular event because the risk is more money than we want to put up. And so we'll find a risk taker that will take the bet and we pay them a fee for that because they don't have their money tied up for very long. And it's good for everybody. But for $1 billion, we were really concerned if you had a winner, the risk taker might always want, did I get? So I figured out a way to do it where the risk taker could be totally confident that the game was on the square. And that was this. Before the event, there are two dice, a red one and a black one. And the risk taker has an envelope which they prepared that the only person that knows what's in the envelope is and inside the envelope, it's going to say black 1, red 6. So if you throw the two dice, and after you've thrown them, now he opens the envelope up and shows what you had to throw in order to win. So if it says black 1, red 6, you won $1 billion. So nobody knows but the risk taker what they're throwing for. So even if you had the capability to cheat, you would know what you needed. So you couldn't game the system.
Right.
So
right.
the only way it could be gained is if the risk taker and the guy throwing the die on it together. And then not only they have to be out together, then they got to figure out a way to control the two dice to throw what's inside the envelope.
Right.
Now, if you do that, and you do that with me watching under surveillance camera, you're entitled to win them. That's not going to happen. So,
yeah. Well, plus I can't imagine anyone actually risking 20 million, even though, you're getting 50-1 on a 35-1 shot. The bankroll that you would need, I don't know that Warren Buffett has enough money to justify, a bet that big. Well, yeah, he probably does, and Elon Musk
Yeah,
does.
but if you don't, I mean, and the other thing is people that play the lottery don't have that kind of.
Yeah.
You don't have billionaires playing the lottery. Just,
And they also don't understand math, or they wouldn't be playing the lottery in the first place.
oh, I hadn't been to Vegas in a while, and I was at the Wynn because there's a really good restaurant there that I wanted to try. It's Sinatra's
Yeah.
Italian restaurant. So we're walking through the pit, and I hadn't been to Vegas really since COVID. And there were there was zero, double zero, and triple zero on the roulette. And I hadn't seen that or heard about it. So it caused me to stop. And I asked the pit boss, what's this deal? And with a straight face, he said, oh, we've added that. It makes the game more exciting for the players. I had a hard time not saying anything, but I didn't. I just, oh, that's very interesting. Thank you so much.
One last bet I wanted to, because you have had bets on so many crazy different things. I remember when you were on Gambling with an Edge, you talked about a cow patty bingo where at a
Yeah.
rodeo. But the one I wanted to ask you about, there was some bet about for $500,000 on how long it would take to change a tire.
Yeah. Yeah. This to me, if I won this prize, I would have given it back. I wouldn't have done it. The prize was for this promotion. Come to a NASCAR race, and I don't even remember now where it's located, but there's a training center for pit crews for NASCAR. So to come to wherever this racetrack is that has the training center for the pit crew. You spend 2 days with your 7 of your best friends or 8, however many is on the pit crew. I don't even remember how many it takes for a pit crew, but and learn how to be a pit crew, learn how to change the tires. And then we're going to bring a NASCAR in just like it's the real deal. And you get to change the tires. And if you make the pit stop and the changes within X number of seconds, you win $500,000. So we took that bet because we didn't think that 8 people that were not professional could have done the pit crew, and they couldn't. They didn't. But that we only did it. It was a one-off, and it was interesting because in the gift shop at the training facility, you could buy fenders and hoods that had been in car wrecks, so you could hang them on your wall at home. Now I'm looking at your house, and I don't see anything like that on any of your stuff. They also had the tires where you could put your kids inside the tires to take their photographs for portraits. I will tell you the dumbest thing that I've done in 35 years. I know you used to play some blackjack, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit.
And I understand there's sometimes there's a dance or something in Vegas that some people like. I've never had a chance to come. I'd love to sometime. Never have. But we did a promotion in Atlantic City where you could win your line. They invited 64 high rollers to a blackjack tournament. And if you won the tournament, whatever your line of credit was, that's what you won. So if you came in and you had a credit line of $1 million, you won 500,000, 500. Smallest credit line anybody had was 100. So the casino had $100,000 deductible. They invited 64 players, and the format was you went from 64 to 32 and 32 to 16. When they got to 16 players, they put one player per table. They had 16 tables in the pit, and it was head to head against the dealer, and they played 22 hands. At the end of the 22nd hand, whoever had the most chips won the event.
Oh, so you don't know what the other players have or how much. Yeah.
That was by design. That was intentional. The other thing we didn't want, let's say you put everybody at a table and you have a credit line of 1 million, I have a credit line of 100,000, and you're about to win, and you have me dump, and then you give me part of your million. So that was the reason.
Yeah.
So now I did something really stupid. This was arrogance on my. We allowed them to do it in the ballroom at their property instead of doing it in the pit. Do it on the ballroom on the stage for Penn and Teller because we could set up a mock pit. So we did that, and I didn't require them to do that. It's really stupid. So the round of 64 went fine. The round from 64 to 32 was fine. We get down to 16, and there are 2 players that have $1 million, and other people have less. So I'm watching the 2 tables that have $1 million. What I didn't realize, there was one player that had $500,000 line. He's on the 21st hand. He's got a stack of chips about to, and there was no limit on how much he could get. So it's the penultimate hand. He puts it all. He bets it all. Now, they were using 6 days. So there was no way, from a counting standpoint, you're not going to get enough of it. Yep, it's just one-on-one. You're not going to, we weren't worried about them really counting.
No, of course not. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
On the 21st hand, the guy that was dealt 8-6. The dealer had the 10 up to be hit. She deals him a 10. And he looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" I didn't ask for a hit. I said I was good. There's no video surveillance. There's no pit marks. I'm not watching. It's a guy with a $500,000 line of credit, and he's making a big to-do about that he didn't have. And I'm really worried about what I'm going to tell my boss when I get home because I messed up. I made a really, really bad mistake. So it very quickly, like in less than 5 minutes, it went from the dealer to the pit boss to the casino manager to the general manager. And this guy he's making as big a scene as anybody you've ever. So the casino manager shows up and he asks the guy what happened and he asks the dealer what happened. And then he tells them, "I'll be back in about 15 minutes." And the first thing he did is moved them and the player away from everybody. He got him so it was just everybody. I mean, he moved the guy over way out of the way.
No, wait, had the dealer already revealed their whole card yet, or
Yeah,
or what?
yeah.
And
Well, yeah, it was, yeah. The dealer said you busted and showed it. They were, you know. So, well, it didn't even matter what was the dealer's whole card because the guy had already busted. He had 16 up. She hit it with a 10, so he got 26. He's already busted before she ever showed. She couldn't have busted.
right, but I mean, if he says I wanted to stay and the dealer has 20, he loses the hand anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so what happened was the casino manager went around to every pit bar and every dealer that had ever dealt with this guy and asked them a question: what does he do in this pit? Does he sometimes hit? Does he sometimes stand? What's he do? And he always made the right play. He always took a hit. He never stood, ever. He's been playing there for 5 years, and he's never in 5 years that any of the people that have dealt with him played that he has never made. So he gets the guy. I was there, and to me, this was really brilliant. Let's say the guy's name is John. He said, John, let me ask you a question. How good a blackjack player are you? And the guy says, I'm as good as they come. There isn't anybody who plays blackjack better than me. I play as good as anybody in the world. I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. I went and talked to every pit boss and every dealer that's ever dealt to you, and they all told me the same thing, that you play as well as anybody out there. And you and I both know when you play that good, when the dealer has a 10 up, you hit. We're done talking. You and I both know what. You're not taking a shot here. You need to take your mind someplace else. Feel free. But I've got 61 other players or 63, whatever, I guess 64 other players, and I have to consider them too. And you're not getting it advantage. I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, I was stupid and he was brilliant. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Norm, it's been a real pleasure, and I want to thank you for doing.
Well, you're very welcome. I hope it helped.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Have a nice day.
Well, there you have it. My interview with Norm Beck, one of my favorite people. Anyway, you can always reach me at lifeisagamblepod@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at RWM21. As always, I really like to hear your comments and questions and recommendations for interesting people that you'd like to hear on the show. And for you Gambling with an Edge fans, stay tuned this week or early next week. We will have Gary Condler on to talk about the tax implications because of the big, beautiful bill, the tax implications for professional gamblers. All right, that's it for today. See you next time.